Dr. Katrina Graham is an associate professor of management and entrepreneurship department at Sawyer Business School, Suffolk University. Recently, Dr. Graham and her research team published a very interesting study specifically focusing on addressing performance tensions in multi-team systems. So this article was published in Academy of Management Journal, which is considered one of the most prestigious academic journals in the business field. Today, we are very, very lucky to have Dr. Graham with us. So let's get started to learn more about Dr. Graham and her interesting study.
So by the end of this project, we had, again, these individual badges that what they did, these Bluetooth sensors, and we actually collected this data with students. So that we were in an engineering school, and that's why we could get such a large number, which was really great that we had 40, as you mentioned, the number of participants, and we had 44 multi-team systems, which is a lot. And so we were looking at how much these students interacted within their focal teams. They were working really on a class project. They also had to collaborate with other teams. So we could measure how often are you working based on these sensors with your immediate team members, and how often are you talking to and collaborating with members of other teams. My personal opinion is that it doesn't mean that you can really plan it, if that makes sense. So I always say work on research that I think is interesting to you, because first of all, if it's not, you're not going to want to continue it. If it's as miserable and you're just trying to get into a top tier journal, I don't think that that's a valuable use of your time. But if it's interesting and you think it has potential, I would say looking for, again, something that's new and different, something that, again, only if this interests you and you think it adds value, but something that is looking at a old problem in a new way, something that challenges the status quo. So thinking about really being conscious about coordinating outside of your focal team. And so again, for multi-team systems, that can really, help the people in business or running organizations with multi-team systems, and encouraging opportunities for those informal interactions, which with Zoom, right, or with remote work, that could be a different type of mechanism or different type of process. Our research was all in person. So, but potentially this also could apply to remote work, and thinking about creating opportunities for remote teams to collaborate with one another to make the whole multi-team system more effective. So I think with this team, what worked really well was I played more of a support role, and that worked well for this project. So it's a really great collaboration, and I think a lot of us were in person together. Andrew even visited the site where we were collecting data just to get the project off the ground, because he knew a lot about the technology. He trained me a little bit how to run it. And so I think sometimes too, if you can get those in-person collaborations for part of the project, that can be really helpful. And I think it helped us move this along in an efficient way. So the way that we often collect data, we use survey measures, we ask people questions. And in this particular project, we actually, what made it a bit innovative, and it's a newer sort of way to analyze teams, is we actually have these badges that you can collect objective data around who's interacting with whom, how often, how are they physically collaborating with one another. And so that this project really was just to better understand that and better understand conflict within teams and how that relates to how individual teams and the whole system end up performing.
So in this case, when we're looking at this particular research project, how would you see, how might it relatable to the real business world, and how can it be implemented regarding the key findings that the team observed throughout this project?
Yeah, I think there's obviously a limitation that was collected with students. So this is, obviously there's more research that needs to be done around multi-team systems. It probably does depend on the context. If you are talking, say, healthcare or military, those are just two examples of multi-team systems. I think in terms of how the findings can be used, though, is that really leaders of teams, or even teams themselves, be really thoughtful about how are we making sure that we are collecting information within the team and collaborating within the team, as well as communicating across teams. You can think of multi-team systems as teams of teams. And this happens actually a lot, especially in organizations where innovation and collaboration is needed. So you can think about a healthcare setting, right? You've got teams of surgeons and nurses handling a surgery, but they work in a larger team within the hospital. In the military, you see this a lot, right? You have these smaller teams that then have to collaborate to execute a mission. And so you can think about these teams as sort of individual teams that also have to collaborate with one another to achieve something. And so the drive of this project was really to better understand how can they work together to achieve performance outcomes.